I was sitting at my desk this morning, just staring at a dashboard. You know the kind I mean.
Oh, yeah. The wall of graphs.
The wall of graphs, CPU usage, error rates, latency, memory availability, all these,
Yeah.
crisp, clean green lines. And I realized something. I felt safe.
Safe. That is a really interesting word to use for a server log.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, usually people feel bored or stressed,
Mm-hmm.
but safe.
No, seriously, I felt safe because I trusted it. If that chart says CPU is at 99%, I don't argue with it. I don't sit there thinking, is the server just having a bad day? Or is it lying to me?
Right. You just act.
I just act. It's a fact. But then maybe an hour later, I get an email from HR.
Yeah. Let me guess. Please complete the annual employee engagement survey.
You nailed it. And that feeling of safety, it just PFT evaporated instantly. My immediate reaction wasn't, oh, good data. It was, oh, great, another box to check. I didn't treat it as information. I treated it as noise.
That is such a universal experience. I mean, it's what we call the eye roll factor. We treat hard data, the machine stuff, the logs, as absolute truth.
The gospel.
The gospel. And we treat soft data, the human stuff, as, well, as fluff. Or worse, as a trap.
Exactly. And that's really the tension I want to unpack today in this deep dive. Because we live in this world that claims to be obsessed with data. We say we're data-driven. But the moment you try to measure something human like culture or trust or burnout, we roll our eyes. We assume it's propaganda or marketing nonsense or, just HR trying to justify their budget.
And honestly, that skepticism is valid. I think we need to say that up front. We're going to validate that feeling today because, frankly, most of the surveys you and I encounter in the wild are terrible. They're just awful.
They're designed poorly or they're manipulative.
Exactly. But, and here's the twist for today's deep dive, the research we're looking at argues that our instinct to separate hard and soft data is actually a lie. It's an illusion.
That's a big claim. It is. The central thesis we're exploring is that you can measure the invisible. You can measure culture with the same rigor, the same mathematical precision that you use to measure that CPU temperature. But to do it, you have to use a branch of science that most people have, never even heard of.
Psychometrics, which sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel, maybe Minority Report or something, but it's actually the science of measuring mental capacities and processes.
Exactly. And the journey we're going on today is fascinating. We're going to start by looking at why we hate surveys. We're calling it the bad data gallery.
I like that.
Then we're going to look at how to actually build a scientific instrument to measure something like culture. And then the part that really blew my mind when I was reading this is when we realized that these same principles apply to your computer logs.
That was the kicker for me. The idea that hard data might be just as fuzzy as the soft data if you aren't careful. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We have to start with the problem. We have to talk about why I rolled my eyes at that HR email.
We have to visit the bad data gallery because you can't appreciate the solution until you really understand the pollution we're swimming in.
The pollution. I love that because it really does feel like we are drowning in bad surveys. So let's walk through the exhibits. The first one is the most malicious. The source material calls this the push-pull.
The push-pull is the dark arts of survey design. It's not research. It is propaganda disguised as inquiry.
It's the survey that isn't actually looking for an answer, right?
No,
It's looking for a specific answer.
Precisely. A push-pull has a clear agenda. The questions are engineered weaponized, really in such a way that it is logically difficult or even impossible to answer honestly unless you already agree with the person asking the question.
So our source material gives a really striking case study here, and I want to be super clear to you, the listener. We are analyzing the methodology here. We are putting the politics completely aside to look at the mechanism of the survey itself.
Yes, this is about the craft of deception, not the content.
Exactly. This comes from the Mainstream Media Accountability Survey that was released back in February 2017.
Right. This was released to the public, ostensibly to gather data on how Americans felt about the media landscape. But when you look at the construction of the items, the bias is, it's overwhelming. It's a masterclass in how to skew data.
Okay, let's look at the very first question in that survey. It asked, do you believe that the mainstream media has reported unfairly on our movement?
Okay, let's just stop right there. From a psychometric perspective, that sentence is a disaster. There are two massive violations of data integrity just in those 12 words.
The first one that just jumps off the page at me is our movement.
Exactly. Our movement. The moment you use that phrase, you aren't asking a question. You are drawing a battle line. You are forcing an us versus them stance. You aren't being asked as a neutral observer. You're being spoken to as a member of an in-group.
It creates a situation where if I say no, I'm not just disagreeing with a fact, I'm betraying the team. It's a loyalty test.
Correct. It triggers tribal loyalty. And the second violation is the term mainstream media. In that specific political context, at that specific time, that phrase wasn't a neutral descriptor like the press or news organization.
No, it's loaded.
It was an epithet. It was a negatively charged term. So the question is essentially asking, has the bad guy been unfair to us, the good guys?
There is no way to answer that cleanly. You're boxed in. Any answer you give is contaminated.
And that means the data you get back is useless for understanding reality. It tells you who is loyal to the narrative, but it tells you nothing about the actual fairness of media reporting. It's not data, it's a head count of your followers.
Okay, here's another one from that same survey that really made me, well, it made me laugh in a dark, I can't believe this is real kind of way. Were you aware that a poll was released revealing that a majority of Americans actually supported President Trump's temporary restriction executive order?
Oh, this is a classic. It's the information delivery trick. This isn't a question.
It's a press release with a question mark at the end.
Exactly. It's like me asking you, were you aware that I am the smartest person in this room? I'm not asking for your opinion. I am trying to plant a fact or a fact in your head under the guise of a question.
But look at the psychological lever being pulled there. A majority of Americans.
Oh, it's powerful. It's social proof. Humans are social animals. We are terrified of being outliers. We have a deep primal need to belong. By framing the question with, most people agree with this, they're essentially daring you to dissent.
Right. They're not just asking for your opinion, they're telling you what the correct opinion is.
They are leveraging your desire to be part of the herd to coerce a yes. Because if you answer no, you're admitting ignorance. Oh, I wasn't aware. And if you answer yes, you're validating their premise.
It's a trap, not a query. It's brilliant in how manipulative it is.
And then there was this gem. Do you agree with President Trump's media strategy to cut through the media's noise and deliver our message straight to the people?
The media's noise. There it is again, the framing.
Again, look at the framing, not reporting, not news, not journalism. Noise.
It forces the respondent to accept a premise just to answer the question. It's like asking, have you stopped beating your dog? If I don't think the news is noise, if I think it's actual information, I can't answer this question as it's written.
Exactly. It forces you to step into a reality where the media is just static interference. So the takeaway here is pretty stark. If these are the kinds of surveys people are used to seeing, whether in politics or even in marketing, where they try to trick you into saying you love a product, it is no wonder we don't trust the results.
Skepticism is the only rational response to a push-pull. These instruments generate data that cannot be trusted to reflect reality. They're designed to reinforce a narrative, not to discover truth.
But sadly, malice isn't the only reason surveys fail. I wish it were. Sometimes it's just plain incompetence.
Right. So we move from the push-pull, which is malicious, to the incompetent survey. These are the ones where the person asking genuinely wants to know the answer, but they just suck at asking.
They lack the training. Survey design is a science, but most people treat it like writing a grocery list. They just jot down what's on their mind.
And the source lists some of these common flaws that I think we've all seen. My favorite is the leading question. The example given is, how would you describe Napoleon's height?
Right. That's a subtle one. It seems innocent.
It does, but it assumes the premise. It implies that his height is a notable characteristic that I should have an opinion on.
Versus asking, say, was Napoleon short? Which is even worse.
Right. If I ask, was Napoleon short, I am planting the idea of shortness in your head before you've even accessed your own memory. I've primed you. You're now thinking about shortness, not just his height in general.
Exactly. You are biasing the respondent. A neutral question lets the respondent provide the descriptor. But if I asked, how much did you enjoy this deep dive? I am assuming you enjoyed it. A better question is, what was your opinion of the deep dive?
Okay, so then there's the loaded question. Where did you take your certification exam?
This one is more obvious, but it's everywhere. It creates a logical paradox for anyone who hasn't taken a certification exam.
What do you do?
Right. It forces them to either skip the question, which messes up your data, or lie, which messes up your data, or select an option that doesn't apply. It assumes a reality that might not exist for the respondent.
And then the one that I think plagues corporate surveys the most, the one that drives me up the wall, the double-barreled question.
Oh, this is the worst.
The example in the text is just perfect. Are you notified of failures by your customers in the NOC?
This is a data nightmare. Let's break it down because it's so important. You are asking about two different notification sources in one go. Customers and the NOC, the Network Operations Center.
So let's say I get calls from the NOC all the time, but customers never call me. How do I answer that question?
You can't.
I can't. If I say yes, I'm lying about the customers. If I say no, I'm lying about the NOC.
Precisely. You are paralyzed. And whatever you choose, the data on the back end is garbage. If I'm the analyst and I see no, I don't know if that means neither, not customers or not NOC, you simply cannot separate the data sources. Your data is corrupted at the source.
And the fix is so simple. Just ask 2 questions.
Just ask 2 questions. It's not hard.
Okay, so finally, before we leave the gallery of bad data, we have to talk about the quick survey, the one-question wonder, specifically the Net Promoter Score, or NPS. You know, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this product to a friend?
Now, to be fair, the text is nuanced here. It doesn't say NPS is bad in the same way a push-pull is bad. In fact, it acknowledges that NPS has become a kind of industry standard. Executives love it.
Why do they love it so much?
Because it's a single number. It's easy to understand, easy to track, easy to put on a slide.
Our NPS is up 5 points. We are a plus 50, and everyone cheers.
Right. And because everyone uses it, you can benchmark. You can compare your score to Apple or Amazon or your direct competitor. That has value. You can't deny that.
But I sense a but coming.
But statistically, it's fragile. It's a single data point. Imagine trying to judge a person's entire health by just taking their temperature once.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
You might catch a fever, sure, but you'll miss the broken leg, the high blood pressure, the heart conditions. It's a very narrow view of a complex reality.
So single-question surveys draw very narrow conclusions.
Exactly. If you really want accuracy, if you really want to understand a complex phenomenon like customer loyalty or employee happiness, asking more questions, what we call multi-item surveys, is always better. It adds resolution to the picture.
Okay, so we've established that the world is full of push-pulls, incompetence, and oversimplified quick surveys. It's a mess. I'm feeling that skepticism all over again. So how do we actually fix this? How do we measure something real, something invisible, without falling into all of these traps?
This brings us to the core of our deep dive today. We need to talk about latent constructs.
Latent constructs. It sounds very academic. Can you break this down for us?
Sure. Let's start with an analogy. Think about the difference between a manifest variable and a latent construct. A manifest variable is something you can see and measure directly.
Like the temperature in this room? I can look at the thermostat?
Right. You stick a thermometer on the wall, it says 72 degrees. That is a direct measurement, or website response time. You ping the server, it takes 200 milliseconds. That's a manifest variable. It's manifest. It's right there.
Okay. And a latent construct.
A latent construct is something that exists, it is real, but it cannot be measured directly. It's invisible to the naked eye and to the thermometer. The classic example that we're using today is organizational culture.
Right. I can't walk into a meeting room and stick a culture thermometer into the air and say, ooh, it's a bit toxic in here, reading a solid 8 on the toxicity scale.
Exactly. You can't touch culture. You can't weigh trust. You can't put burnout on a scale. But, and this is the key, you can see the effects of culture. You can see the shadows it casts, if you will.
So we can't measure the thing itself, but we can measure the shadow it casts. How do we do that?
We measure the component parts. These are the manifest variables that we can ask about. If you write good questions, each question acts like a circle in a Venn diagram.
I love this visual. Walk me through it.
Okay, imagine the invisible thing, the culture, is the center of a flower. You can't photograph the center directly, it's hidden. So you photograph the petals. Each question is a photograph of one petal.
So one petal might be how we handle failure.
Exactly. One question asks about information flow, another asks about how failure is treated, another asks about collaboration. None of these questions is culture by itself. But where they all overlap, that's the culture. The shape of the overlap gives you a high-resolution image of the invisible center.
So this explains why you can't just ask, is your culture good?
That is the wrong way to measure culture, and it's surprisingly common. If I ask you, is your culture good? Think about how much ambiguity is packed into that tiny sentence.
First of all, what culture are we even talking about? Do you mean my immediate team of 5 people, my department of 50, the whole 10,000-person company?
Or do you mean the national culture of the country we're in? It's completely undefined.
And the word good, what does good mean? To the CEO, good might mean profitable and scrappy. To me, good might mean fun or low stress. To my colleague, good might mean innovative and fast-paced.
Exactly. If everyone interprets the question differently, the data you get back is just noise. It's a meaningless number because you have no idea what anyone was actually rating.
So you have to be specific. You have to define what you are measuring before you ever try to measure it.
Exactly. You cannot measure a latent construct until you have defined it rigorously. And this is where the source material brings in a really powerful framework from Dr. Ron Westrom.
I love the Western model. It's one of those things that once you hear it, you start seeing it everywhere. I started categorizing my family dinners using this model.
I can absolutely see that. It is very applicable. Westrom was a sociologist who studied safety-critical systems. We're talking hospitals, nuclear power plants, aviation.
Places where information flow is literally life and death.
Life and death. And he argued that you can categorize organizational cultures based on how they process information, specifically how they handle bad news.
The crash test version of culture. How do you behave under pressure?
Essentially, he breaks it down to the 3 types. And as we go through these, I want you, and you, the listener, to think about the last 3 jobs you've had. I guarantee you will spot these immediately.
I'm already wincing. Okay, give me the first one.
The first is pathological. This is power-oriented.
These are the places where messengers are shot. That's the key phrase.
Yes. Think about a dictatorship or a workplace ruled by fear. Everything is about the hierarchy. The boss is king. And what happens to information in a monarchy?
It's hoarded.
It's hoarded. Information is power, so you don't share it. And if I'm a lowly engineer and I find a critical bug, that might embarrass my boss.
You hide it. You bury it. Because in a pathological culture, the messenger is shot. If you bring bad news, the leadership doesn't look for a solution. They look for a neck to wring. Who caused this? Who can we blame?
So failures are covered up, responsibilities are shirked, not my problem, and everything festers under the surface until it becomes a catastrophic explosion.
Okay, that sounds horrible. What's the next type?
Then you have the bureaucratic culture. This is rule-oriented.
This feels like the DMV, right? Or a massive legacy bank. Everything is about the process.
In a way, here, messengers aren't shot, but they're neglected, they're ignored. If you bring a problem, the response is, did you fill out Form 3B, or that's not your department?
It's death by process.
It is. Responsibilities are narrow and siloed. I manage the database. The network is your problem. I don't care if the site is down, my little dashboard light is green.
And when failure happens,
It leads to justice. Or, more accurately, more rules. It's not about learning, it's about compliance. Oh, someone deleted a table. Okay, from now on, nobody is allowed to touch the database without 3 manager approvals and a signed form in triplicate.
which slows everything down to a crawl and doesn't actually solve the root cause. Okay, and finally, the holy grail, generative culture.
This is performance-oriented. Here, the focus is on the mission, on getting the job done right. And so messengers are trained. The organization wants to know when things are going wrong so they can fix them.
That's a huge shift. You're actually encouraging people to find problems.
You are desperate for them to find problems because a generative culture knows that bad news is actually a signal. It's valuable data. If you tell me the system is about to crash, you just saved me $1 million. I should buy you lunch, not fire you.
Failure leads to inquiry. The first question is, why did this happen? Not who did this.
Exactly. Responsibilities are shared, collaboration is encouraged, and failure is treated as a learning opportunity.
Okay, so we have this beautiful definition. We know what a generative culture looks like conceptually, but we still can't measure it directly. So, going back to our Venn diagram, our flower petals idea, the researchers had to create manifest variables, specific survey items, to measure this.
And the text lists the 7 specific statements they used. Remember, these are rated on a scale, usually 1 to 7, from strongly disagree to strongly agree.
Let's read them because they are really specific. They aren't asking, is it good? They're asking about tangible behaviors. Number 1, information is actively sought.
Do people ask questions? Do they look for data?
2, messengers are not punished when they deliver bad news.
Notice how tangible that is. Messengers are not punished. That is a specific experience you can verify. You know if Dave got yelled at last week for reporting an outage.
Number 3, responsibilities are shared. Number 4, cross-functional collaboration is encouraged and rewarded.
So do teams work together or do they throw things over the wall at each other?
5, failure causes inquiry. 6, new ideas are welcomed. And 7, failures are treated as opportunities to improve.
These 7 items form the petals of the flower. If a team scores high on all of these manifest variables, we can statistically say, with high confidence, this team has a generative culture. We have measured the invisible.
Now, there's a crucial detail here that the source material points out. A really subtle but important point. When they ask these questions, they don't ask about the organization. They ask about the team.
This is absolutely vital for accuracy. Organizations are large, complex beasts. You might have a super generative engineering team sitting right next to a completely pathological sales team.
Or a bureaucratic HR department.
Right. If you ask someone to rate the company, they have to somehow average all those experiences out in their head, which leads to fuzzy, unreliable data. But if you ask about your team, the people you work with every single day, you get a sharp, accurate picture of their lived reality.
You're measuring the microclimate, not the global weather pattern.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So we have better questions. We have a clear definition. We're asking about the team. But I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I'm the skeptic again. How do we know people aren't still lying? How do we know they aren't confused? Just because the question sounds good, how do we know it's mathematically sound? How do we know it's not just a fancier kind of fluff?
This is the stress test. This is the part that makes psychometrics a science and not just an art. We don't just write questions and hope for the best. We use statistical guardrails to check our work.
And this introduces 2 terms that sound terrifying but are actually pretty intuitive: validity and reliability.
Let's start with validity. Simply put, validity asks the question, are we measuring what we think we are measuring?
Is this thermometer actually measuring temperature, or is it measuring air pressure?
Exactly. And there are 2 flavors of this that the text mentions, discriminant and convergent.
Okay, let's break those down.
Right. Let's use a non-work example. Let's say I want to create a survey to measure love for Italian food, a simple latent construct.
Okay, I'm with you. I score high on this construct.
Yeah. Me too. So I ask, do you like pizza? Do you like pasta? And Gassa, do you like horror movies?
Wait, one of these things is not like the other.
Exactly. Discriminant validity is about proving that things that should be unrelated are actually unrelated in the data. If my survey results show that everyone who loves pizza also loves horror movies, I have a problem.
Your survey is contaminated.
Right. My Italian food scale is somehow picking up on Friday night preferences instead. I need the math to show that the answers to pizza and horror movies are statistically distinct buckets. They don't correlate.
So in the workplace context, if I have questions about team culture.
If I have a set of questions measuring team culture and another set measuring, say, satisfaction with the office snacks, they shouldn't overlap perfectly. You can have a great team and terrible snacks. You need to prove statistically that these are different constructs.
Okay, that makes sense. So what is convergent validity?
That's the opposite. It's proving that items that should be related actually are related. They should converge on the same underlying idea.
So looking at our Westrom list.
If you agree with the statement, messengers are not punished, you should also logically agree with failure causes inquiry. Those 2 behaviors go together in a generative culture. They are 2 sides of the same coin.
Right. It would be very weird if a team said, oh yeah, we never punish messengers, but we always blame people for failures.
Exactly. If our data showed that, it would mean our model of generative culture is broken, or the questions are written poorly. They aren't converging. Convergent validity confirms that the questions are hanging together as a cohesive group. They're all measuring the same invisible thing.
Okay, validity is about measuring the right thing. What about reliability?
Reliability, or internal consistency, is about whether different people read and interpret the questions the same way. It's about clarity.
If you read the question and think it's about your boss, and I read it and think it's about the coffee machine, the question is unreliable. It's ambiguous.
Precisely. We need to make sure we are all speaking the same language. We use statistical tests to ensure that the questions are being understood consistently across the entire population of respondents.
So, let me get this straight. If a survey passes these tests, discriminant validity, convergent validity, and reliability, we can trust it.
Yes. Even if it's soft human opinion, because the math has verified that the instrument itself is sound. The ruler we're using is accurate and precise.
This leads us to my favorite part of the source material, the aha moment. Because sometimes the math doesn't just confirm what you think. Sometimes the math tells you that your brilliant human intuition is flat out wrong.
This is the failure notification story. It is a perfect example of why this statistical rigor matters. It's a detective story where the detective is a statistical algorithm.
Set the scene for us. What were the researchers trying to measure?
So the researchers wanted to measure failure notification. Basically, how do engineers find out that something is broken?
Seems simple enough. You get an email, a text, a phone call from an angry customer.
Right. They initially thought notification was a single latent construct, just one big idea called knowing stuff is broken. They wrote a bunch of survey items to measure it, things like we get alerts from our logs, customers call us, the NOC tells us, and so on.
And they did a pilot test first, right, with a small group.
Yes, with about 20 people, a small sample. And in the pilot, everything looked fine. The validity checks passed. The items seemed to group together nicely. It looked like one cohesive construct.
They thought they had it, but then came the big test.
They rolled it out to a large-scale population, hundreds of engineers, a much bigger, more diverse data set. And when they ran the validity checks on this large data set, the statistical model failed. It broke.
What does that mean it broke? The computer crashed?
No, it means the math said, warning, these questions are not measuring one thing, they're measuring two things. The convergent validity test failed. The items were not all hanging together.
Wow. So the math found a hidden split in reality that the humans had completely missed.
Exactly. The algorithm was smarter than the researchers. When they dug into the data and looked at how the questions clustered, they saw two distinct separate groups. Group A contained items like, we are primarily notified by customers and we are notified by the NOC. Group B contained items like, we get alerts from logging, threshold warnings like CPU over 90%, and rate of change warning. Oh, I see it now. So Group A is external or manual. It's reactive. You're waiting for someone to call you and tell you your house is on fire.
And Group B is system or proactive. The computer's telling you something is wrong before the customer even notices. The smoke alarm is going off.
Okay, so the math says there are two buckets, but playing devil's advocate again, so what? Why does it matter if we lump them together? It's all just notification, right? Because of what happened next. This is the punchline. When they took those two new constructs and compared them against actual performance software delivery speed, stability, availability, they found something profound. Construct B, the proactive, system-based notification predicts high performance. Teams that are good at this are elite. Construct A, waiting for the customer to call, does not.
Wait, just to be clear, if you rely on customers to tell you things are broken, you are statistically likely to be a lower performer.
Or at least it doesn't help you be a high performer. But here is the kicker. If they had just used a single question, like, do you monitor failures? They would have missed this distinction entirely.
Because everyone would say yes.
Everyone would say yes. The high performers, who use logs, and the low performers, who wait for angry phone calls, would have all answered yes. The data would have shown no correlation with performance. They would have published a paper saying monitoring doesn't matter.
That is wild. The statistics caught the error in human thinking. It proved that hearing from a customer is fundamentally mathematically different than hearing from a log.
And that discovery only happens because they treated the survey with scientific rigor. They didn't just accept the answers. They stress-tested the instrument itself.
This brings us to the final mind-bender of the episode. We spent all this time talking about surveys and feelings and culture, soft stuff, but the text pulls a massive switcheroo at the end.
It pivots right back to the hard data, the system data, the stuff on that dashboard you were staring at this morning.
And the argument is that everything we just learned about surveys, it applies to your server logs too.
The core statement in the source material is this: all measures are proxies. Every single one.
Unpack that. Because that feels like a radical idea. A number is a number, right?
Is it? When you look at CPU usage, you think you are looking at a hard fact. And in a way you are. But why are you looking at it? You aren't looking at it because you personally care about the temperature of a silicon chip.
No, of course not.
You are using it as a proxy for a latent construct called system health.
Right. I care because if it's high, the website might crash. I'm worried about the outcome, the user experience.
Exactly. Response time is a proxy for user experience. Error rate is a proxy for system stability. These are all manifest variables that we use to guess at a latent construct of, is the system working well?
And just like with surveys, if you rely on a single question, a single metric, you are vulnerable. You're fragile.
The text calls this the bad data risk in systems. Imagine you are only measuring response time. That's your single source of truth.
Okay.
Now imagine a developer pushes a code change that accidentally breaks the little script that collects the response time data. The website is actually down, or slow as molasses, but your metric is stuck reporting a beautiful 200 meters because the collector itself is broken.
I have bad data, and I don't know it. I think everything is fine, but the building is burning down.
But if you use the latent construct approach, if you say system health is composed of response time and CPU usage and disk I/O and memory, you are building that Venn diagram of health.
So if the response time metric freezes, but at the same time CPU spikes to 100% and disk I/O drops to 0, the pattern looks wrong.
The other variables alert you that the latent construct has changed. You can see the anomaly. Hey, the CPU is screaming, but the response time is flat. One of these is lying. The other pedals tell you something is wrong with the first pedal.
So using multiple metrics, just like using multiple survey questions, protects you from being misled.
It acts as the defense mechanism. It protects you against rogue data, whether that's a lying survey respondent, a manipulative push poll, or a buggy monitoring script. It's the same principle.
That is such a cool connection. The idea that a lie on a survey and a bug in a script are basically the same problem from a data science perspective. They are a bad signal. And the solution is the same. Redundancy, statistical validation, and looking for the latent construct, not just the single number.
Precisely. It
Yeah.
brings us right back to the start. The crisis of trust in data is really a crisis of methodology. We don't trust data because we so often collect it poorly. If we apply the rigor of psychometrics, defining our terms, using multiple measures, testing for validity, we can trust the data, whether it comes from a human brain or silicon chip.
So what does this all mean for the listener? Let's wrap this up. We've gone from hate-reading political push polls to analyzing organizational culture with the Westrom model, to stress testing survey questions, to realizing that our dashboards are just surveys for computers.
I think the summary is this. Good research and good decision-making requires that you stop looking for simple answers to complex questions. You need to define what you want to measure. You need to use multiple items to capture it. And you need to verify it. Don't just trust the number. Trust the system that produced the number.
And for you, the listener, practically speaking, next time you see a survey, look at the wording. Be a critic.
Exactly. Ask yourself, is this a push-pull? Am I being led? Is this a double-barreled question? Am I being manipulated, or is this just incompetent?
And at work, when you look at that dashboard,
Strings.
yeah,
What invisible thing is this metric trying to be a proxy for? And is this single number enough to tell me the truth, or do I need a second opinion from another metric?
I want to leave everyone with a final provocative thought. We talked a lot about measuring culture, the lived experience of the team, and how we can measure it with the same statistical rigor as server temperature. It makes me wonder, if we can do that for culture, what else are we ignoring?
That's the question, isn't it?
What other invisible human experiences, things like burnout or creativity or psychological safety or even joy, are we ignoring simply because we haven't bothered to design the right manifest variables yet? We treat them as unmeasurable, but maybe we just haven't done the math.
The invisible is measurable. We just have to be willing to look for the shadows.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you on the next one.